I got arrested 8 times in a year and you got arrested no times, that doesn't tell you anything. It could just be that I was doing a bunch of illegal shit. Like that doesn't really mean anything. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Ben Kruse. This is another episode of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow this show across social media at MTGP ETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench podcast network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart. You can follow Ben at BenCruz144. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to ETBpodcast.com. And you can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. And Moving the Goalposts on the Empty the Bench Network is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right. So after we just had a crazy conference championship weekend, and pretty soon, and now we're coming to an end with football season. It's the worst time of year because we get the worst of both worlds. We have the end. We're going to end up having like freezing cold weather and also no football to go along with it, which is like the worst thing to have. But okay, so we all have to talk about the Chiefs and the Bills. We're all having a little bit better of a day than than Bills fans are right now. I don't know, Ben, what were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, just another classic of a game between two really good teams, two great quarterbacks. I mean, we basically have been seeing this matchup within the last 4 or 5 years when it comes to the championship, and it always delivers, regardless in terms of how great of the Chiefs are, how bad the Bills are, because the Chiefs, they've been calling the Chiefs kind of the team that kind of fell off a little bit when it came to talent the last couple of years. They felt like it was kind of potentially the Bills kind of overcome them in the playoffs. And I'll talk a little bit about in terms of why the Chiefs at this point in time, to me, just feel like the inevitable when it comes to them against the Bills. But they're always just great games in general. Obviously we just got another great treat. And they remind me of, I myself as a Pats fan, just a lot of the Patriots, Chiefs, Patriots, Steelers, a lot of the older modern games when you have two great quarterbacks, two great teams, two really good coaches. So it delivers. And, there's nothing as better as yourself, I guess, besides the two teams that are playing potentially for nerves-wise, just as a football fan, because these are always great games and really two really good teams.
Well, yeah. I think we have to discuss the elephant in the room, which is some of those calls that definitely went the Chiefs' way. I would argue that, like, look, I understand that reffing is not as easy as it looks because, we all have they kind of have instant replay too and everything. But there were, I would say, 3 particular calls that really went in favor of the Chiefs that were at the very best questionable, not even really questionable. They totally should not have gone that way. I mean, first of all, when we have the Xavier Worthy catch, I don't know if the refs know this, but a catch means you're supposed to actually catch the ball. The ball clearly hit the ground. Neither team had possession of it at any point. I don't know. I don't know what it was that the refs. I mean, look, I'm not somebody who says that like everything is rigged in favor of the Chiefs, even though I've come to root against them. And more on that later. But I have come to root against them, like I would say most of America. So I'm not saying that. However, it is bad optics when that was the narrative all year, that the Chiefs get all the calls, and it was a bit of a narrative last year too. The Chiefs get all the calls, and then there's 3 of them that really were just bad in this particular game. It's not that I think the games are rigged in favor of the Chiefs or that bad calls only happen to the Chiefs. It's just easier to see it now because it's an AFC championship game and there's a really bright light shined on it. So that's certainly a part of it too. But I will say it is really, really bad optics when there's 3 calls that really should not have gone that way. That went in favor of the Chiefs, that clearly should have been in favor of the Bills. And we all kind of can see it. I mean, look, I understand that, like, it should, the original call on the field stands and all of that. And I get all that. But I think we expect a little bit more from officiating sometimes. And it's just is not good when when it happens in favor of the Chiefs. Now, if it happened in favor of Buffalo, they would now it would not have been, as people would have forgot about it, obviously. But I will say, at least this time around, there were no like really bad roughing the passer calls or anything like that. I think that the Chiefs look. I am not, like I said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist who thinks that like everything is rigged in favor of the Chiefs. And in fairness, I don't think many people actually are. I think it's just something you say out of frustration because it seems to happen so much. Like, I don't think most of the people who say this game is rigged for the Chiefs, I think most of them are being hyperbolic and don't think it's literally true. Because rigging, I don't think rigging sports really makes a ton of sense. Like, it's kind of hard. Like, of course, you can get a guy to you could pay a guy to throw a game like the 1919 Black Sox or something like that. But I mean, like, if there's no way it would be scripted. It could literally be scripted or fixed by the front office or anything like that. That doesn't mean that there isn't a tendency for the Chiefs to get a whole lot of really big calls and really big spots. And it could also just be a product of, maybe the reps feel the need to protect Mahomes a little more because he's the star. And that makes a certain amount of sense because that's been true across sports throughout all of my life. It wasn't so much a thing in baseball, but it certainly has been a thing in football and basketball. I mean, for a really long time, LeBron got a whole bunch of calls that he shouldn't have gotten. So this is not exactly something new. Look, I don't think it's like Goodell telling the refs, you have to make these calls in favor of the Chiefs. However, I do think there is a culture and maybe a bit of an understanding among the refs that, look, if we're on the fence, it's better to give the benefit of the doubt to the Chiefs. That certainly could be a thing too. But you know what? The NFL really has to shake this, especially in today's day and age of social media. Like, it used to be that topics would go away a little bit, like it used to be that like 15, 20 years ago, I don't think it would be as big of a deal because there wasn't such a big thing with social media. But now that there is such a big thing with social media and every little thing gets talked about so much, I feel like the NFL kind of has to address that. But I mean, I will say those calls, I mean, like I said, the Xavier Worthy quote unquote catch, complete bullshit. That was not a catch. The other thing was those first downs. After looking at it again, that was a first down. Not only was that a first down, the play before it was probably a first down too. And even if it wasn't, that ball was spotted terribly. That was spotted like a half yard short. And maybe we're looking at it a bit more now because we see bad spots all the time. Like in the regular season, but this is in the AFC championship game, and it happened in favor of the Chiefs, so it's a little easier to notice. But those calls were just brutal. And it's not even getting into the game itself, but those calls were just brutal.
Yeah, no, I as a Pats fan, I can't sit here, during our dynasty years and not say we got away with shit. I'm not going to sit here and not say we didn't. But when you look at terms of the officiating, to a degree specifically, officiating sucks. Like, they're going to get calls wrong. It's going to happen. But like, I saw a Schefter tweet that apparently went far. I don't know if you saw it.
I saw it. Well, he tweeted a lot of things going into this game. By the way, Adam Schefter is like, he is like the most tone deaf tweeter I've ever seen. I don't even I don't even think he does it on purpose. Like there are some people who are like Twitter trolls. He's not a troll. He's just kind of a Twitter clown, is how I would put it. I remember when Deshaun Watson settled and he like tweeted something that was like that looked like it came from Deshaun Watson's lawyers. I mean, look, going to bat for Deshaun Watson post 2021 is one of the dumbest things you can do if you work in sports media and you're supposed to be objective. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. But yes, I've seen a few of his tweets, but go ahead.
Yeah, and he basically like Chiefs fans on because I was just kind of seeing a bunch of the stuff after the game was over on social media, and Chiefs fans were just like screenshotting a lot of that stuff, and we're like, okay, all right, come on, like And listen, I think like you're mentioning, you didn't really get much into the game. I mean, a lot of the calls that at least have come against the other teams from the Chiefs side have been really timely. I will say a lot. Those three of those calls. I mean, one of them. I mean, of course, that fourth down sneak was. I mean, to me specifically, and I'm not a Chiefs fan. I'm not a Bills fan. People can argue if it was short or not. I think specifically Allen didn't move the ball specifically ahead. I think specifically he was just kind of in that overall push, and that's the reason why they didn't give him the forward progress, even though specifically he should have. So a lot of the times when you basically lean that ball out, a lot of the times you get the call and not. But it's what it is. They obviously it's. I think for a lot of the season, people just kind of seen the Chiefs and they've seen the tiredness of it's the fatigue, kind of like with the way we had the pass were. And I think that it's just kind of the added element in terms of, if you keep on winning, you're going to get a lot of other stuff specifically in terms of like you're going to get away with stuff more than other teams. Like I could understand it to a degree, but when I look at this overall game, I just think this was a great game back and forth. And it wasn't like I mean, I don't want to obviously go right into this game now, kind of saying it now, but the Bills essentially had a chance right at the end. And when I look at this overall game, I saw nothing specifically from the officiating that pretty much was like, oh, come on. Like, it was just a good game. And I just felt like whoever got the ball at the end, and Josh Allen had a chance at the end. I mean, heck, that throw that he made to Kincaid, going across the middle of the field. Now, I know we obviously talked about the Drew Aller play in terms of going across the middle of the field. Josh Allen essentially made an absolute crazy throw across the middle of the field.
Yeah.
And in that specific case, I think that was the right place to go with it, but he just got pressured. And
Dalton Kincaid certainly could have caught that. Although I'm not going to make it sound like people are making it sound like, well, people are saying it hit his hands. It was also like a diving catch. It wasn't exactly an easy play.
Yeah, people are talking about it's like the next Mark Andrews thing. And
it's nothing like Mark Andrews at all.
It's not because, of course, people are going to compare it because he dropped the ball. But one specifically, I mean, Mark Andrews' ball legitimately, like nobody else basically was around him. It was to essentially tie the game to go into overtime. Basically, when he dropped it, the game was over for the Ravens. The Bills, Kincaid dropped the ball. It was a massive timely part of the game, but the Bills had a chance to stop the Chiefs on the next ensuing drive. They never got it. So, that was obviously a big part of the game where he dropped the ball. But like you mentioned, it was a diving type of catch. The specific comparison between the two, I think it was more in terms of just like the morale from the fan base. It's like, the Bills had to obviously kind of grieve in terms of Mark Andrews because a lot of the stuff on social media, people kind of feel like the same way Dalton Kincaid. Listen, I feel bad for the kid, but also with Andrews as well is he had a timely mistake during the game before that drop as well. This was obviously a little bit different in terms of like he made the drop and it's like people are going like crazy on him.
And it was a tough catch too. It was a really tough catch. And Mark Andrews also is like one of the star tight ends in the league.
Right.
I think there were slightly higher expectations, but with Mark Andrews, it's like that drop was like it was, first of all, it was after a fumble. Yeah. And also that drop was like one of the easiest catches we could imagine. I mean, Dalton Kincaid is not even like that good. He's like, he's all right. He's not, his expectations aren't that high. Whereas Mark Andrews, it's like, if your third string wide receiver or tight end drops that, you're mad. And that ties up the game, and then it could go to overtime. So it's way, way different. Whereas the Bills at that point, it was like, all right, that was like a desperation move by Josh Allen. So I don't think they're comparable.
If he caught the ball, people wouldn't be talking about in terms of the drop. People would be talking then about how it potentially could have been one of the greatest catches out there. So it's like you can't have it both ways. You basically essentially blame the guy where essentially he had to basically lunge over for it when, to be fair, Allen made a great ball, but it was underthrown because he was pressured. So Kincaid had to make more of a force of coming to the ball, and there was people still around him. So theoretically, even if he had the ball right under him, somebody could have hit him right behind. People are making it out to seem like it was a very easy catch, and I simply disagree.
Yeah. And no. Oh, by the way, we're talking about Adam Schefter. Okay, so I think this is the tweet you were talking about. Penalties during Chiefs' 8-game win streak in the playoffs via Paul Hembo. Roughing the passer, Chiefs 0, opponents 6. Unnecessary roughness, Chiefs 1, opponents 4. And that really fanned the flames of everything. I mean, in fairness, I don't think those numbers tell you a whole lot.
No.
I think that obviously some of those unnecessary roughness calls against Mahomes were completely absurd. In fact, I think maybe like of those 6 roughing the passer calls, I would say maybe like 3 of them probably were a bit absurd. I also think, in fairness, the outcome doesn't really tell you there's a problem with the people with the refs, or the outcome doesn't mean there's a problem with how the rules are enforced, is what in other words. Like it would be like if I got arrested 8 times in a year and you got arrested no times. That doesn't tell you anything. It could just be that I was doing a bunch of illegal shit. Like that doesn't really mean anything. Like I'm not saying, oh, the cops hate me because they arrested me 8 times and they don't talk to you. Well, it could be that I'm just doing stupid shit.
Yeah.
It's a similar sort of thing in football. Like it could also just be true that the Chiefs, like all other dynasties, are just a much more part of it is that they're a much more disciplined team than their opponents are on average.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it too. I mean, look, I'm not saying that you couldn't make an argument from looking at those calls that a lot of them were just bad calls, but I mean, I don't think that really tells you anything. You could probably do that with a whole lot of teams too.
Right.
I don't think that really tells you a whole lot. And not to mention, it is also true Mahomes probably takes advantage of it more than a lot of quarterbacks do. Certainly takes advantage.
They asked him about it too. They asked Pat during his weekly presser before the AFC title game about in terms of like the fan bases of other teams coming at you, and he basically kind of, I mean, in his fair sense, I mean, he really wasn't going to say no, like the refs are essentially my favorite. He basically kind of took it. I think he took it the right way, basically saying the fact of like we're out here going to play football games and we're trying to win. I mean, that's what you should be saying, right? He's obviously wasn't going to straightly just say it as, oh, we're getting all the help we can get. But I also do think that, he's not going to publicly say it, but they feel like specifically that they're like, we're the Chiefs, we're a dynasty, it happens when you're the best, you're going to potentially get some favorable calls, it's nothing against the team specifically, but that's why other teams are going to hate you because you're going to be successful specifically if you're playing well or not. And if you get more added stuff when you are playing successful, it makes that overall play just that more frustrating.
Right. And look, a lot of it is a little bit preconceived. Like if you're looking for something, you're going to find it. And that's part of it too. Like every year during the regular season, you can find some calls that go in favor of teams or against certain teams. So it's easy to say that, like when you're really looking for it, with a whole lot of people with Chiefs fatigue, so to speak. And there certainly is some Chiefs fatigue, which I guess I get a little bit. I think that, like, you know what? I think that fatigue for dynasties is a real thing, but I also think people think they have more fatigue than they really do. Like the Chiefs remind me, obviously everybody's going to bring up like, Patriots with Brady and Belichick. And I had a whole lot of Patriots fatigue, but that's because I hated the team.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, like you were a strong case because you were a Jeff fan. It's like, it's kind of like what the Chiefs are doing the Buffalo fans. It's like, well, to be fair, I mean, with the Bills, like they could be able to beat them in some capacity. It's just not when it matters. But it's with like the Patriots to the Jets, it was like just the straight punching bag that we basically just gave you guys yearly. And if I was on your other side, if I was a Jet fan and you were a Pats fan, I mean, I feel the same way. It happens to a lot of teams specifically. It's just like you have a team's number specifically, and there's really nothing else you can really say. But just
it's not even that the Patriots had the Jets' number. It's just that the Jets were a lot worse.
That too. Yeah.
I mean, they did have some of their plays and from Spygate from before a few games, but for the most part, the Patriots were just way better than the Jets when they played.
Better teams, yeah. No, I agree with you.
And I hated them, and I still do, but they're not good right now. It's hard to hate a team that's that bad.
Right.
And the Jets shoot themselves in the foot now, so it's a little different now. And I will say, I think for Chiefs fatigue that people are having, people think they have more of it than they really do. It's easy to say it because we're living through it. Although I do think it's a real thing. But people are talking about the Patriots and comparing them to the Patriots, and I get that comparison. My biggest comparison, actually, what I think of them as, though, if anything, I think is the Golden State Warriors.
I was going to say the same thing.
They remind me so much of the Golden State Warriors because the Warriors were much more recent, and there was a lot of fatigue for the Warriors too. I mean, like, what was the biggest criticism of the NBA for such a long time? That we're getting the same teams over and over again. We're always getting the Warriors in the NBA Finals because they're a super team. I remember in one off season, they got a whole bunch of the Warriors just got totally within 2 off seasons, really 2 or 3 off seasons. They just kept getting more and more stacked, and people were hating it. And people were getting Warriors fatigue. Although the truth is that it's a similar thing with the Chiefs in a sense, and it's weird because I think that, if you look at this Super Bowl, both teams are hated, but they're hated for completely different reasons. People seem to hate the Chiefs and the Eagles. Now, everybody, especially Giant and Cowboy fans, have hated the Eagles forever. I've hated the Eagles forever. Although I think America seems to hate the Eagles too, but and the Chiefs, but for completely different reasons. Because with the Eagles, people only hate the Eagles because of their fans.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if you spend a lot of time around any fan base, you're going to hate that team. Football does not bring out the best in people. Going to games, it just does not bring out the best in people. People are disproportionately drunk and obnoxious, and they're all wearing the jersey, and it's not even like they happen to be fans of that team. You can see it. It's in your face. So it's easy to I remember I was at the Jets Bills game that the Jets should have won. That was very close. And the place, MetLife Stadium, was riddled with Bills fans. I was shocked.
They typically travel well.
It seems like they do. Yankee fans travel well.
I've done a couple Bills at Pats games, and even when the Bills weren't great, I would still they travel to New England a lot more because they're a lot better of a team. But even back then, I give them credit, they would still come to games even when I would see them play against the Pats in person.
Yeah, and you're right. They do tend to travel well because they were really good fans. They are some of the best fans in sports. Bills fans. I mean, they literally light themselves on fire and jump through tables in the name of the Bills. They're as crazy as they get. But I will say, after the game, going to the bathroom was filled with a whole bunch of Bills fans doing the stupid Buffalo chant, which is one of the stupidest chants there is. In fairness, the Jets chant is literally spelling the team name, so that's kind of dumb too. But yes, I hate the Bills chant, and in that moment, I really fucking hated the Bills. I really did. And, especially when you have to go to the bathroom and pee next to a bunch of Bills fans, it's going to make you hate the team. So, so I guess Philadelphia fans are extra obnoxious. So that's why people hate the Eagles, even though oddly enough, I think that the Eagles have some of the most likable players.
Yeah.
The Eagles, people hate the fan, the biggest reason people hate the Eagles is because people hate the fans. The second reason is because people don't like the head coach. And by the way, Eagles fans hate Nick Sirianni more than anybody. yet he's like going to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't really like the head coach. Although I will say, I think Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley are two of the most like likable players in the NFL.
And it's crazy too because Saquon Barkley and Nick Sirianni, the relationship is like really like tight. And like you wouldn't like you talk about Saquon Barkley, who feels like a very like chill guy, even though he is very emotional and for his sake because he's an absolute monster and a stud. And then Sirianni just got this like cocky, like I wouldn't go too far as saying arrogant, like type of thing, but like he just for a lot of people, if he's not, he's one of those guys that's like if he's your coach, you love him, but if he's not your coach, you just straight hate him.
Yeah. Well, the thing is though, the point is though, it's like the Eagles are just not a likable team because they're fans. But like I said, Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, both I find to be very, very likable in so many ways. I mean, Jalen Hurts, just from the story of being Jalen Hurts is the ultimate underdog story. He was never that good in college, and throughout, like when he was at Alabama, nobody really thought he would go pro. And then the story of him getting benched in the national championship in the second half, the team winning without him, and then him saving Alabama in the SEC championship game the next year, and then transferring to Oklahoma. It's just such an underdog story that, if he was on any other team, I feel like that would be the focus. But because he's on the Eagles, people, it's easier to just hate the Eagles. The Chiefs is completely different. It's the Chiefs. People hate them because of the perceived special treatment that they always get. But there's really nothing about anybody on the Chiefs that anybody really seems to hate. Maybe Travis Kelce a little bit.
The Swift factor. I mean,
and Taylor Swift, who's not on the team. But outside of that, it's just like nobody really hates any players on the Chiefs. Like nobody hates Patrick Mahomes that much, other than like the fact that they get special treatment. Nobody hates Andy Reid, and they don't put forth like any sort of bad boy image either. Like the Chiefs don't like we've seen teams. We've seen the Seahawks from 10 years ago, or you get teams like the bad boy Pistons or something like that. Like there are times when we get teams full of a whole bunch of assholes that are on the team. The Ravens, like 25 years ago.
But like the Ravens kind of like the Ravens always bring that defensive like thug toughness.
Yeah.
So it's like they're and the thing is like they're very good at it, but it's like if you don't have a specific type of team,
right?
I want to just kill those guys so freaking bad.
Yeah, but like the Chiefs don't put forth any sort of like negative image. It's just the perceived special treatment that makes people hate them, and the Chiefs' so-called fatigue.
I don't think their fans are that awful. I mean,
no,
I don't even think they're that
awful at all. The only people that might be awful are like the bandwagon Chiefs fans. That okay,
like Warriors days, like you mentioned, like the people that like were like the Warriors before like the big dynasty stuff. It's like, and then you bring in like the bandwagoners. It's like, like go Warriors, and it's like you look at those people are like, I don't know about that.
I don't know. I think that like that element is very small.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I don't think there's that big of a bandwagon in any for any sports team, to be honest. I mean, there's always some bandwagon. I don't think it's that. I think it's very overstated. Like, I don't think that just because somebody wears a Warriors jersey, like a Steph Curry jersey, that doesn't mean they're like claiming to be a Warriors fan. Just like I see people wear Yankee hats all the time that probably aren't Yankee fans and aren't claiming to be. It's just sort of a fashion statement. Like it's a similar thing, I guess you can say. Like I guess if some Swiftie who probably has never heard of Travis Kelce before he dated Taylor Swift is wearing a Travis Kelce jersey. All right, I guess that's a little bit of a bandwagon, kind of, but that's not really a Chiefs fan anyway. But yeah, it's just that perceived special treatment that the Chiefs always get. It's not even fully perceived. It's like it's not totally incorrect. It's not even really all that incorrect that they get a whole lot of special treatment. Like I see a whole lot of Chiefs fans like posting statistics from like since Patrick Mahomes has been on the Chiefs, and they're like, well, look, we got this much penalty yardage versus that team. They got that much penalty yardage. Like that's not. Look, the special treatment that the Chiefs get is not enough to the point where it will be statistically significant. It's just sort of like in these certain situations, the Chiefs are just getting the benefit of the doubt when they certainly shouldn't. That's really the point of that's not something that's going to show up in a statistic exactly.
Mhm.
And yeah, so there was a whole lot of fatigue, but my point is that I think that fatigue for dynasties is a little overstated, and we think we have more of it than we really do. Because we're living through it right now.
Yeah.
And I think that we all have a little bit of a tendency to like hate the current moment and long for the past or long for the future where we don't have it. But I think that 10 years from now, and if there isn't like a Chiefs dynasty, we're not going to be looking back on it and thinking, well, thank God it's all over. Like we just had a stomach virus for 10 years or something like that. Like, I don't think that's going to happen.
No.
It's just easier to say it now. But by the way, let me just say this. I think that the fact that the Chiefs are in their third straight Super Bowl and might end up three-peating proves the NFL is not rigged. Because I feel like if the NFL really was rigged, this wouldn't have happened. I feel like this was not the NFL's preferred outcome. Paradoxically enough. Like, I don't think the NFL wanted the Chiefs to go to the Super Bowl again, if anything.
No.
I don't think they wanted another Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl.
It reminds me really quick about when, and sorry to cut you off, but it reminded me of when the Deflategate happened for the Pats during the Dynasty era. And they suspended Brady for 4 games. I remember this so vividly. And the media stuff about it, this and that. And when Brady won, I mean, obviously a lot of that stuff in terms of perception against the Pats fans and the team. But then when the team won the Super Bowl that year, and especially in the most unprecedented way possible, and you see Goodell's face giving the trophy to the guy that he suspended for 4 games, there's a lot of this specific like perception in the league that like, oh, the refs are in favor of this specific team. I just don't see it because, like you mentioned, the Chiefs wouldn't be going for a three-peat if the rest, essentially the league was just gonna like say no, like you're not gonna be in it. Like they had to earn it, and I think that people can hate him or do whatever. Even the announcer for the Chiefs, a lot of his times when they've won, he basically goes, you can something to the fact like you can hate the Chiefs, you can think that they're dead or something like that, but we're still here, like to keep on winning. It's like eventually we talk about greatness, right, as a big thing. I'm a big believer in that. I'm a Celtics fan, and I wouldn't say I hated LeBron, but he always beat my Celtics in Eastern Conference Finals for a while. So a lot of people are, saying for at least Celtics fans are like, I'm just so fatigued. Like, can this guy please get away? Like, I just want to win a championship. But then you look back at it, and for myself, I started to grow more and more of like, I wasn't physically just hating the player. I think it was more the fact of like, I was really just kind of sucked into this greatness that I just never saw.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of something right now.
You saw it, you just never enjoyed it.
Yes. Yeah. And like you mentioned, like maybe within like the next 10, 15 years, like you can kind of look back at this and be like, oh, like, all right, that was awesome to see. But there was somebody that I was listening to actually last night that's saying like, oh, this wouldn't be the first time team ever three-peated. It was like from the XFL day, this like person that I heard. I'm like, why would you even mention that? Like nobody would remember that. So it's like, yeah, like, it's all about the present at this point in time now.
Yeah.
And, you just kind of have to live with it. And I think we'll look back and be like, oh man, like those dynasty days people hated, but we kind of came to grow at the end of the day.
Yeah. And yeah, it's certainly. And the other thing with the Chiefs is that they're good at being lucky. And what I mean by that is that like the reason it's such a big deal that they get the benefit of the doubt of certain calls is that they don't make mistakes. So they always take full advantage of it. Yeah. So if the Jets get the benefit of the doubt on a call, they're likely just going to blow it anyway. But if like the Chiefs do it, they don't make mistakes. So it's always that big of a deal. And that's really why they won, I think, that they didn't make mistakes and the Bills made a lot of mistakes. That had a lot to do with it also. I think a lot of it was just the product of them being the home team. Mm-hmm. I think if they played in Buffalo, the result likely would have been different. And that's because the Chiefs earned it in the regular season. Similar thing with the Ravens and Bills. I'm not convinced the Chiefs are head and shoulders better than the Bills or the Ravens. Mm-hmm. I think the Ravens could have beaten the Chiefs for sure. but they just had home field every single one of these games, and I think that makes a big difference too. I want to get on to the other game, the Commanders. I guess you could say they laid an egg versus the Eagles. They did a little worse than I thought. In fairness, the Eagles kind of ran up the score. It wasn't quite as bad as it looked.
Mm-hmm.
And Saquon Barkley played a great game. Jaden Daniels played a very good game too. His teammates were just terrible. They kept fumbling. There were, his teammates just weren't good. The Commanders' defense was not good, and I will say that's been the Commanders' weakness. The Commanders, we all know, were not great defensively, and there's a few things. One of them is I didn't know the refs could just reward a team with a touchdown.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I wish we had the soundbite of that here on the show, but when they had the encroachment or whatever, like I think it was Frankie Latu, something like that. But I think after like the third, I think they did it twice, right? And then they had a warning. I think the refs gave the Commanders a warning, and then they did it again. I think they were going to try to almost do it again, and the refs just like, all right, come on. Like, you essentially know what's going to happen. Like the Eagles essentially, and that's why a lot of people are very against this like tush push like scenario thing. Regardless if they're going to tush push or not, I think most people thought the not, whether you even give to Saquon or you had Hurts running it, you were going to score anyway. So like,
it was really dumb because it was just a waste of time by the Commanders.
Thank you.
That's all they did. They just wasted time.
Yeah.
I didn't know that they could do that, but it would have been pretty interesting if they did.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's the last thing the refs wanted to do.
Yeah, no, I think the ref I think it was Hockley or it was one of the other ones. He basically just kind of like said in a way of like, please, like we just want to get this game over with.
Yeah, stop this bullshit. It's not even the game; it's just that drive. Like this is complete bullshit. And what do? Keep moving the ball up half an inch? Like at that point, what was that going to do?
You might just put in the end zone. Keep on doing
and by the way, after that, don't forget there was an offsides literally right after that. But I don't think that was on purpose exactly.
No.
And you know what? My thoughts on this game were just that like the biggest losers of this NFL season were the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Two NFC East teams in the NFC Championship game. I can't think of any team more behind the eight ball in their own division than the Giants. I mean, there's almost no way this could have been a worse season for the Giants. You end up winning only 3 games. It looks like for the future, you are by far the worst team in your division. It's not even just like for this year. It looks like for the future, you're the worst team in your division. And other than the only thing that would have been worse would have been if the Cowboys were good and they also made the playoffs. The Cowboys were terrible because
their future looks very bleak too. But I still pick them right now over the Giants, kind of given their situation, and it's not great. Right. That tells you a lot.
Nobody disagrees with that, but that was just this year because of injuries. But in the future, it's going to be even worse, and it's going to be even worse with the Commanders because not only were the Commanders so much better than the Giants, it looks like in the future they're going to be they're going to be in a much better position than the Giants because Jaden Daniels is just a rookie. So it looks like it's going to be so much worse for the Giants. There is no team that is behind the 8 ball in their own division more than the Giants. And on top of that, the icing on the cake, Saquon Barkley is now going to a Super Bowl and had an amazing season with the Eagles. I mean, how many things could have been worse than that if you're the Giants?
Yeah, I really just want to quickly just applaud the Commanders, regardless obviously of this game, but just on a phenomenal season. The fact that I think coming into the season they were projected, I think 4 to 6 wins. I mean, to be fair, it was because with a rookie quarterback, they really just didn't know much about it. And the season that Jaden Daniels had and the stuff that obviously happened in the past, the Dan Snyder stuff and stuff like that. I was thinking about this whole entire thing, honestly, before coming on here. And just Jaden Daniels, I think people knew he was going to be good, but I didn't think people were expecting him to be this good. Just the poise that he had, for the fact that he won 2 games on the road, Tampa Bay and in Detroit. Detroit was literally one of the best teams, I think, for the most part in the NFC for most of the season, and they just absolutely walloped them. And that was saying a lot because of Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn. Yeah, like, and we hate to like cross sports, but like this kind of gives me very OKC Thunder vibes. A very young team that thinks really on the outcome. They got a front office, I think that's going to be ready to spend. Terry McLaurin, was absolutely great. I mean, Scary Terry really kind of got into the next level this year with Daniel, Zach Ertz, Brian Robinson. The whole entire team they're very likable, very fun, and I really wanted to see them beat the Eagles. But like just looking at this overall type of game, yeah, like you mentioned, I don't even think that they really laid an egg. I just think that they beat themselves.
That might not be fair. Yeah, they did beat themselves.
I just think that they beat themselves against a much better team that they basically were underdogs regardless of that. It was the fact that like the Commanders, even when they had some mistakes, they were still really were within reach of this game, and that basically just says a whole lot. You can even make an argument. I mean, I don't think it was going to happen, but you can make an argument that even with even if they had no mistakes, they could still potentially lose because their defense obviously wasn't getting them off the field. But maybe it's within a 1 or 2 score game by the end of the fourth quarter. You don't know. It was just a lot of the time mistakes that they had, and they were very in terms of the first couple games, they didn't really turn the ball over a lot. And when you unfortunately turn the ball over a lot against a very good team, a very good defense, and a very good running game with a good offensive line that can control all the clock, it's just tough. It's just way too tough. But you also just can't look at this Commanders team and be like, oh, wow, like that's an awful loss. Like literally, no, like you lost to a better team. You got a bright future ahead. Yeah. I think that if you're a Commanders fan right now, you should be heading yourselves high. And for the Eagles, they're scary to a team. A great defensive team. Saquon's obviously up there for MVP. Giant fans are kicking themselves to the max. They didn't get Drake May. Thank you, Tommy DeVito. I really, really appreciate you. They could have gone a potential generational, draft pick down the road at quarterback. They don't know their quarterback situation right now. They still have to figure out. I mean, obviously they moved on from Daniel Jones, but it's like they don't really know what their quarterback situation right now is. Their front office is absolutely incompetence, and the Commanders and Eagles are just a better team. And they're not going to win anytime soon. So, give credit to the Eagles on their great overall game. But Commander fans, keep your head up.
Yeah, there's a good chance that next year the Commanders, Eagles, and Cowboys are all playoff teams, and the Giants are just way, way behind. I mean, they might be lucky to win a game in their own division outside of injuries, or maybe a team resting their starters at the end of the season.
Yeah, like the Chiefs at the last game. But
so it's official. The Jets hired Aaron Glenn. I am not feeling it. I don't like this hire at all. I've talked about it last week. I've talked about it a lot, that it looked like that the Jets were going to hire Aaron Glenn. I didn't like this hire at all. I wanted them to hire either Doug Peterson or Rex Ryan. It's not that I mind hiring a defensive head coach, but the last thing I want to do is hire another defensive coordinator with no head coaching experience, when that has been the biggest problem for the Jets within the past decade. Like, that's been the same exact theme, other than Adam Gase, who was an offensive coordinator. He did have experience and was an offensive head coach. Other than Adam Gase, it's all been defensive coordinators with no head coaching experience. Why would we go that route again? That doesn't make a ton of sense. And, people, I just think a lot of people wanted them to hire Aaron Glenn because he played he is a former Jet.
Yeah.
And that's why. But being a former Jet doesn't mean you're going to be a good head coach. Or being a former player doesn't mean you're going to be a good head coach. Isaiah Thomas is one of the best point guards in NBA history, and was also one of the worst head coaches in NBA history. So, I have no reason to believe that this is going to be any different. I just don't. And now I'm going to give him a chance. I hope he does well. I'm not writing him off right away. I'm just saying this was not a good hire. Doug Peterson would have been better. Rex Ryan would have been better. Even though people think I'm crazy for saying that, Rex Ryan has a history of success as an NFL head coach. And so does Doug Peterson, and he's an offensive head coach. People forget that Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback, and we're choosing a defensive coordinator over him. This was just I think it was a dumb hire.
So I have the good about it and the bad about it. I'll say the good about it, I think he's very Robert Saleh-ish when it comes to the culture. I think when Oldberg essentially was brought in kind of that mid part, I think that a lot of the players kind of tuned out when it came to in terms of just every single week, it just felt like a team that essentially felt like it was checked out. So I think that Glenn will obviously bring that. He just, obviously, being a Jet in terms of like getting this team kind of on the backswing of it. But my negative about it is just you could be a great overall head coach. I mean, a great overall person to be the coach, but it's all about the fit too. And I just don't really know about this fit as a whole because I feel like we're doing if you're a Jets fan, I mean, if I was a Jets fan, I feel like we'd be doing the exact same thing as we literally just did, in which we got Robert Saleh, which is obviously not a bad hire. But I don't know, is he more made to be a coordinator or is he more made to be a head coach? It's totally different when it comes to obviously having that. I think that the name obviously was a big reason why the Jets got him. It's just the name brand, I think, was a massive thing. But when you have a guy, Aaron Rodgers, where he's a very questionable future, and you may be going for a quarterback in the draft, I personally thought they should have went offensive minded. And you could potentially, have Glenn potentially be your defensive corner, or maybe have somebody else be your defensive corner. Because the Jets, the problem hasn't been their defense. I think that I know that last year they kind of fell off, but the Jets don't have a bad defense. I just don't think that they do. So
last year they did not have a good defense.
They didn't, but like the talent, when you look on it, it shouldn't be a bad defense.
Right. The reason they had a bad defense was because of coaching.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I think Glenn could really help. I mean, he has a pretty good knowledge when it comes to defense and stuff like that. I just think, I mean, the Jets specifically have been their offense has been so out of whack consistently, and I think that they should have brought, like you mentioned, a Doug Peterson. Even Mike McCarthy, and I'm not the biggest McCarthy guy, but I thought he could have been honestly a better fit kind of for the Jets specifically because I feel like he's more of an offensive minded type of coach than Aaron Glenn would be. So I think you could have gotten Glenn, but I just don't know specifically if this was the specific right fit for him. But like you mentioned, like you said with Saleh, give this guy, a chance. And you kind of have to also see specifically what the quarterback situation room is before you kind of make any judgments on this. But I'm very indifferent with it. I don't hate it, but I also don't love it.
I mean, look, they could have been maybe the Cowboys. It's not like the Cowboys hiring Schottenheimer.
Oh God,
perfect transition.
Gotta love Jerry World.
But you know what this means? This means he's going to be the head coach for like maybe the next 5 years, most likely.
Yeah, no, this is so Cowboys too. I mean, their fan base online is absolutely going, and the funny thing is, I don't feel bad for their fans. They're such a fan base that every single year they think they're the shit, and it's like, yeah, I feel bad for them not winning a long period of time, but they give me off vibes kind of very similar. Like, I don't hate the players on the team, but their fan base, they're kind of like very Philly-like, I guess, in a way. I haven't really met a lot of Cowboy fans there's some that I've met that are great people. I'm not saying it's a whole entire thing, but it's just the overall like perception on their fan base. So I'm not saying like they had this come into them, but it's like the Cowboys had so many other candidates that are much better hires. And I think it's more because Jerry wants to have the power. That's really it. So he basically wanted to just have like a fallback option in terms of like, because Schottenheimer is their offensive coordinator. They, could come in and be a head coach. I see a lot of people that think it's not a bad hire. I don't know essentially what they're thinking. I don't think it's a great hire at all, personally. And the Dak stuff, I think Dak is a solid quarterback, but I don't think you're going to win a Super Bowl with him. I think just kind of when you look at the overall, outlook of the league. So I just don't know what the Cowboys are doing. I think they're going to be a fine team for years to come, but they should be a lot better in terms of what they have as an organization, but their franchise, as you look at it, it's just a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah. And some more coaching news. Pete Carroll is going back to the NFL, hired as the head coach by the Raiders. This reminds me, honestly, of the NFL version of Bill Belichick going to UNC. It just
Okay.
seems so similar. It is just it seems like all of these old head coaches, or at least old successful head coaches, have the same mindset of like, all right, I'm not a head coach anymore. And I know I'm a little old in my 70s, but I really want to get back into it. And that seems to be what it was. And it was just like in both cases, it's like Bill Belichick becoming the UNC head coach. It's a job that almost seems beneath him
Mhm.
in a sense. Like Bill Belichick even coaching a college program after the run he had in New England seemed unfathomable, let alone a
Same.
low level team like UNC. And it's the same
Yep.
thing with Pete Carroll going to the Raiders.
Mm.
You're going to this clown show of an organization with your level of success. I mean, what's the quarterback situation going to be
Mm.
with the Raiders? I mean, oh my God. Like, I'm not surprised that it happened, but I think it's very telling that Pete Carroll wanted to go back into coaching. And he's one of the few head coaches who's had success in college and the NFL. Um, and I just think it's so it seems like it goes the same route with all of these coaches. They want to get back into it. That's why something tells me Nick Saban might want to go back into head coaching at some point. After
Yeah.
if he at some point in the future.
Yeah, I think that this was more, and like I'm nothing against Pete Carroll. I am not. I think he's a good coach, but you essentially not only went back into NFL coaching, but Nick, you also look at the division that he's now going into. You're going into a division with the
Mhm.
Chiefs, who are going to
It's
absolutely
a
go nowhere.
gauntlet. Mhm.
What?
It's a gauntlet.
Yeah. And maybe he won it because he likes the other, coaches he gets to go against. But hey, good luck winning anything. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like you mentioned, it's gauntlet. The Broncos are a come up. I don't even think that the Chargers are going to be a bad team with under Harbaugh. So you look at the whole entire division long term, and it's like it's not specifically he probably looked at the opening just like I'm gonna take it. I'm ready for this. Franchise to start turn around. But it's almost like when you're looking at a job, it's like you need to have this thing, this thing, and this thing to really be like, all right, I'm ready for it. Carroll, it's almost like, yep, I'm ready to go. I'm gonna be looked as one of the most older coaches in the league. And maybe, I mean, he's already won a Super Bowl. Maybe winning is not his priority right now. I mean, I don't think that's not the
Well, I
case.
think he just wanted a job.
I think exactly. I think he won a job because he just went into a gauntlet division. And no offense, Pete, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough to win anything there.
Yeah. By the way, it was just the 5-year anniversary of Kobe's death. When I first saw the story, I remember when this happened. I remember where I was.
Yep.
And
Wow. 5
I
years.
I remember seeing I remember I was in Astoria at the time,
Mm,
and I remember seeing the story, and I thought it was fake.
I think a lot
I
of
thought it
people.
was fake, like because it seemed fake.
Mm,
Um, Even though people dying in helicopter crashes is actually fairly common. Like I think, like now, if I saw a story of a famous famous person dying in a helicopter crash, I would believe it because
no.
it's happened a few times in the last 5 years.
Yep.
But at the time, I just it seemed sort of unfathomable, and I thought the whole thing was fake. Um, that's what I thought. And then after a while, I figured out, oh, it's actually real. Um, it seemed like a fake story though at the time. That's what I thought. It was. I've never seen a death in the sports world affect not even just people in the sports world, but like the whole country affected by a death in the sports world quite like this one. Obviously, because it was just it was so unexpected. That was a big part of it too.
Yeah. No. So for me, I remember, I think it was on a phone call with some of my buddies, or like I got back from like work, or was coming back from somewhere, and I got myself home, and I was on my phone, and I got a notification. I'm like just like you,
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people kind of reacting to this, but a lot of the times when you're reacting to something, you want to make sure you just get some more information on it. So I'm just like, people are saying a lot of this stuff, and I'm like, there's no chance, there's no way. Um, and then about 25 minutes later, 30 minutes later, you really kind of start seeing the national media outlooks and all that basically kind of burning it out. And Yeah, I was pretty emotional, to be honest. I mean, I'm a Celtics fan, but he was someone that not only wasn't impactful to just in sports, but I just think in general, like you mentioned, because when you look at obviously people and figures and stuff, it's like you look back and it's like Kobe Bryant, even people that aren't sports fans, you probably remember, you're probably like, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
probably know that name from somewhere. So,
Everybody knew Kobe.
yeah. So it was like I remember obviously they doing the flowers around the Staples Center when it used to be that name. Um, it's like yeah, and I knew some of my buddies actually that I pod with on my other network that were Laker fans, and I kind of just had a conversation with them right after the fact, and basically just reminiscing a lot of memories and. It's just still, I mean, 5 years, like you were saying, when you just said it, 5 years, it's surreal in terms of the fact that it's been this long now. Yeah, just every single year, it just doesn't, life is short. It can really be short at times, man. And sometimes you just kind of have to look and really take everything you can for granted. So it's just a really unfortunate thing that really happened, and it still is, of course. So there's really nothing much else that I can really say in terms of just RIP and the anniversary in terms of one of the best figures that we have in our world today.
Yeah, and it's also like I'm never getting in a helicopter again. I'm never ever gonna get in a helicopter again. It
Yeah,
was just too dangerous.
yeah. I don't even like people like skydive and do like a lot of stuff like that. It's not that I'm not afraid of heights because I was a I'm a roller coaster. I wouldn't say a geek, but like I used to when I was younger. We used to have a house as a family right by the roller coaster capital of the world in Ohio, and that's not a knock on any of the other roller coaster places like Six Flags or nothing. But there was a specific place we went to every year, and we loved it. So heights was really not a thing for me, but for this stuff, yeah.
So Penn State stole your defensive coordinator.
Yep.
I think this is a great move by Penn State. I wonder if he had a sleepover at his house, like what Jim Harbaugh did to that Penn State kicker that got him to flip his commitment to Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
this is, and now I think he's like the highest paid defensive coordinator in college, the highest paid coordinator in college football.
I would be shocked.
Jim Knowles. I think this is a huge deal because I think part of the reason Ohio State was so good this year was because of their coordinators. Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles, the best coordinator combination in college football.
Yeah, no, you look at obviously just the talent on paper. You can't win a championship just specific by the talent alone. I mean, times you can, but just an overall, type of group. Ryan Day, a lot of people have given, the criticism before in the past, and deservedly so. But like you just mentioned, because they had great coordinators on both sides of the ball, I'm not surprised, obviously, that Knowles obviously went somewhere else. It's kind of unfortunate he went to a rival. You can kind of consider me in Penn State, Ohio State. But Ohio State, they've kind of had their number with them in the past, but Penn State is just having a great guy that's coming in. Ohio State did a really good job, winning the turnover battle a lot this year. Caleb Downs is obviously coming back for Ohio State next year. So their defense, I think, should be good, but Penn State, you lost Abdul Carter, of course, and you lost a bunch of guys, but Penn State has never had issues with their defense. I think that they play a lot of great competition, and now they obviously have a guy that I think could potentially take them to potentially win next year. We'll have to see. They were right there. They've been very consistent. James Franklin's done a really good job over there, getting that program to be consistent every single year. But it's a very Buffalo Bills like I think with them, in which like they're a very good regular season team, but in the playoffs it's a different animal in terms you just get the very unknownish with them.
With Penn State, you mean?
Penn State, yeah.
Well, it's hard to say that because they're only in the playoffs 1 year. It's a small sample size.
Right. But like, yeah, I guess that is true. But like, they just kind of just give me that overall vibe in terms of like, you feel like they were a very good regular season team, but in the playoffs, when you face just a lot of better teams, I guess in the playoffs, it's like, how much better can you be to kind of just get off the snide, I guess, from being in those other teams that could be better than you. But I think just as this overall type of hire, I really like it for them. And I do wish him the best of luck over there.
Yeah. So another briefly I want to talk about: Yannick Sinner and Madison Keys win the Australian Open. Madison Keys is the oldest first-time winner, the first-time Slam winner, which is weird because she's like 29. She's not even that old. But I will say, I obviously went in thinking Sabalenka was going to win. I mean, she was the heavy favorite. Sinner winning was a little bit less surprising, although I will say he seems to be like Sinner has won the last 3 hard court slams in a row. Sinner seems to be becoming like this hard court specialist. He seems to be like the best hard court player in tennis as of late. And there just seems to be a passing of the torch with the generations in tennis. Although Madison Keys winning, she's been around forever, it feels like. And I'm surprised she's only 29. I thought she would be a lot older, honestly, because it feels like she's been around forever. But with Sinner, he's like the new hard court specialist, it seems like. And as we know, Djokovic retired in the middle of his set, in the middle of his match against Zverev with an injury. But like, I didn't think Sinner would be so dominant in that match. I mean, only one of those sets was even close. And then eventually, it just got to the point where Zverev couldn't even compete, even when he was serving. It didn't really look that close, that match.
Yeah, like you mentioned. I mean, I was. For those that don't know, I got the chance and privilege to work at the U.S. Open this past summer. One of the best experiences I've ever done in my life. And I got a lot of time when I wasn't doing my working shifts. I was during my working shifts even too. I'd have a lot of time to kind of walk around the ground and obviously see stuff kind of going on. And yeah, like you mentioned, the generation that we're seeing, I think the tennis generation, both women's and men's, are in very good hands right now. Really cool enough, Yannick Sinner and one of my shifts actually legitimately, like, he had, of course, the security team and everything like that, but he was going right past me. I did give me a little acknowledge, and I'm like, man, that's the number one men's player now in the country. So, it's pretty sick. But yeah, between him winning that and now having him win that and this Open, I mean, he's going to be really the guy. There's obviously a lot of guys. I mean, Ben Shelton, we haven't even talked about. He's going to be up there. He kind of is potentially the young Nadal. We don't know yet. Djokovic, obviously, is just Djokovic. Very unfortunate the way that he retired, because Djokovic never really takes himself out. I mean, he's always a guy you feel, even when you might think that he's hurt, even like the Chris Fowler, basically just like, wow. Like, in terms of like the shocking of like when it came out like that. So he's obviously going to be there for still a while. Zverev's obviously still very good. So congrats to Jannik though, on winning another one. Like you said, he's a very good on the hard court. And Madison Keys, I'm really, really proud of her. I feel like she kind of gets necessary like hate in terms of like she's never won the big thing, but she's just a great player. She just faces a lot of really good competition. Yeah. And it's really awesome to see because it's her first Grand Slam. She's really close with like women like Sloane Stephens, and Sloane Stephens has obviously been very good in the past as well too with winning stuff. So it's finally like her overall time to shine. And yeah, I mean, look at the women's side, the men's side, of course, the women's side, players like Navarro, and obviously Sabalenka is one of the best as well too. So, congrats to both of them. Like I was telling you off air, I didn't unfortunately get the chance to watch a lot of this because the Australian Open, a lot of their matches were basically midnight to 2 a.m. where I was, and I just had no motivation to watch them, but it's like
I was awake, so I watched all of it.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll watch more of the highlights and stuff, I guess, in the next couple of days. I do want to kind of see how it happened, but I did see the Djokovic retirement live because I was actually on the couch falling asleep, and my brother legitimately screaming something. I wake up and like, what happened? And he tells me about the Djokovic stuff. So that was crazy. But yeah, congrats to both of them. And Australian Open, one of the best tournaments out there. So congrats to them.
All right, so that's our show this week. We'll be back next week. This is Moving the Goalposts.